All right, we're looking at 2012 Nissan Altima. The problem we have with this is when he gets on the highway, or really anything over like 40 or 50, it starts vibrating real bad. He let out the gas, it goes away right away. And originally, he had this mount up here. When you go around a turn and give it gas, it would start wobbling real bad. And this dog mount, or the torque strut, was bad. I replaced that. And we were having a noise. If you go over 40, it would sound like a wheel bearing, and it was pretty loud. And we replaced the wheel bearing on the passenger side, and the wheel bearing noise went away. But we're still having a lot of vibration, especially when you give it gas. And I had it up in the air the other day, both tires, and had it rolling. And the whole when it's idling, even when it's idling, the whole transmission's going like this. And ended up being a transmission mount. And while I was under there, I found that, or actually a motor mount. And while I was under there, I found that the inboard CV axle was the boot was bad and it's dry. So we're going to replace the axle today and the motor mount over there and see what happens. But basically, with these CVT transmissions, especially, the faster you go, they don't have gears, so you're building up that energy. And if you have a bad motor mount or something, it tends to really exacerbate the problem. And with this, like we said, we had it in the air, and I could see the transmission going back and forth, and that was basically at idle. So I can imagine what it's doing when it gets on the highway. She said when she's on the highway going like 60, the whole passenger side seat shakes real bad and everything. So I'll get you under there. First thing I'm going to do is take the wheel off, and then we'll get under there and take a look at it. But we're going to make, I guess, two separate videos, one for the axle and one for the motor mount. And I guess first thing we'll do is just tackle the axle and get it out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this wheel off and get going on it. We got that off, and we got it hung off to the side here. I'm going to go ahead and get this 32 millimeter axle nut. I'm going the wrong way. Not coming off. Sometimes you gotta get a bigger tool. Put the Milwaukee on there. Next thing we're gonna go after are these two 21 millimeter bolts that hold the strut. This axle is movement, looks like, so that's good. So we're going to go after these here, get 21 mil open end and a socket, and we'll zip these off real quick. All right, we're going to go through this kind of quick. I'm going to go ahead and take this brake caliper off, 14 millimeter. Just going to zip those off real quick, and tie it up out of the way. Let me get this bottom one off. I don't have my tripod, it broke, so I'm waiting for another one to come in. So got the two 14 mil, I believe it's 14 mil bolts on this caliper. We're going to pull that off, and then we're going to hang it off to the side. Let me get that real quick. One thing I'll note before I pull this away from it too far, I'm going to go ahead and loosen the speed sensor wire, or the ABS wire, off of the strut here. It should just pull out. I might have to get a screwdriver, just kind of pry on the rubber part a little bit. Just pry on this part down here, the rubber part, and it should come off. I gotta go get one real quick, but that'll give us enough room to pull this back far enough to get the axle out without putting a lot of stress on it. Right now it's actually stressed a little bit. So you can see the whole thing, it's just kind of loose right now. So once we get this pulled away and away from the strut, it'll give us enough slack, and then we should be able to pull this out enough to get the axle out. All right, so I got to open in on one side, 21 mil, and 21 on the other side. We're going to zip these two off, and that should give us enough room. Get the axle free. Go ahead and pull these studs out. If yours are, mine are pretty loose, it looks like. If yours are stuck in there, maybe put the nut back on it and tap on it a little bit. They'll become free. These are actually This bottom one's already slide out, and they're pretty free, so we don't have much problem here with rust or anything, I guess, on this one. All right, now that these are loose, we got plenty of slack here, and this, you can just pull this back, and then this will slide right out. It should, unless you got rust issues or whatever, but it usually isn't too hard. So now we got to go and remove a couple bolts, I think, on these. It's been a while since I've done one of these, but pretty sure it's a couple of retaining bolts for the axle, and we got to remove those. I'll get you under there and show you that, and then we'll start taking this axle out. All right, so we're under this thing. This is where it goes into that bracket on the engine, and all I did was just get in between there with the drift that I have. Oh, where's it at? I just used this drift. It's kind of a long drift, got the car jacked up pretty high, and I just got in there and just kind of beat on the axle a little bit. And it should slide out pretty easily. Sometimes they don't. Sometimes they really seize in there and it becomes a big operation. But this one, I just tapped on it, 4 or 5 good taps, and it moved it out. So now this thing is loose. You can see right here it's away from the transmission. So I'm just going to go ahead and pull it out, and we'll slide the new one in. But just be careful when you slide the new one in with the seal and all that. You don't want to, when you put it on the transmission side, you want to make sure you guide it with your hands so that it doesn't pinch the seal. But this one now should slide straight out this back under here, and with those 2 bolts out that we took out through the wheel well, and then we'll slide the new one in. All right, now that we got the axle back in, just go ahead and start your bolt there. I already got this one tight and got the one on the other side. Looking through here, and this one's pretty much tight too, I think. I went ahead and started them and did the old start them a little too much. Yeah, so that, just lost my socket in there, but those are both tight. So now we're just going to feed this back through the axle here, or through the spindle here, and get these strut bolts started. So I'm going to go do that real quick. And I know I'm not showing a lot of stuff here because my tripod's broke. Really sorry about that, but hopefully you can kind of get an idea. Usually I film all this, but hopefully you can at least get an idea of what's going on here. So all I'm going to do now is just get my socket out of there, and then just run this through the knuckle here, push it in, and then we'll line up those 2 bolts and start tightening them back up. The new one slid in. I got under here and kind of guided it with my right hand into the transmission side right here. You want to be careful. You don't want to mess that seal up, and then you just got to kind of guide it into that carrier right there and get it, make sure that your bracket that the bolts go through are kind of lined up. You don't want to be too far off. And it's ready now to get the 2 bolts started, so it should slide in pretty easily. If you're having any kind of trouble sliding this in and you have it centered and everything, then just double check and make sure that you're engaged in the transmission properly. Otherwise, you'll mess that seal up, and then you're going to take everything back apart. So everything is, you just got to kind of get under here and use 2 hands. I would go underneath it and do it. I wouldn't try to just put it in from outside the vehicle, just because you won't have much control over the shaft when it goes in the transmission. So I think it's easier to get underneath it and use one hand to guide it, and then the other hand to kind of wrangle it into this carrier here. And then we're just going to start these 2 bolts and tighten them down. All right, well, if you got this far, you're on the home stretch. You're just going to pull up on this assembly after you get this axle through here. Put your 2 strut bolts back in, tighten those down. Put your axle nut on, tighten that down to 129 foot-pounds. You can either have someone hold the brake after you put the brake caliper back on, or put something in here between the lugs and wedge it to tighten it down. Of course, you're going to put your brake caliper back on before you have someone hold the brake with the 2 14mm nuts. Don't forget to put your ABS sensor wire back through the strut, and then you're good to go. That's pretty much it. So, like I said before, my tripod's broke. Tripod is broke. I like to show more of what I did, but you get the general idea and what you're going to have to do this job. And I already put the motor mount in. If you want to see that video that should be coming up after this in a little bit, it's just easier to put the motor mount in with the axle out. So I filmed that while I had it out. But anyway, that should be it for this one. It's 2012 Nissan Altima driver's side axle. As always, thanks for watching, and God bless.